A week later, and we're back with more SACCS action from Nampo Park and the Free State town of Berteville. This time, it is round 5 of the 2021 championship, the 4x4 Mega World 400. This race was the second in a doubleheader that tested the crews to the limit. As always, all this action is proudly brought to you by Toyota, Ural, Ford and Pirelli. You may be watching this TV broadcast a week after the previous round, but for the crews racing in the South African Cross Country Series, scant hours had passed between the end of round 4 and the start of round 5. It was a jam-packed weekend filled with spectacular racing, proudly supported by 4x4 Mega World. Here's event sponsor Dion Fenter with a bit of background.
It's always been like this. The farming community is a big part of our business. It's also nice to bring it back to the farmers that have supported me for years in the area.
With round 4 having barely finished, let's take a moment to see what the previous day's action had done to the championship standings. In Class FIA, Century's Brian Baragwanath had taken a very slender lead over Henk Ladergan in his TGRSA Hilux. Ford's Lance Woolridge was in third, very much in touch, whilst Janelle de Villiers' decision to test the new T1 Plus for Dakar saw him tumbling down the order, as the car isn't eligible to score points in the SACCS. The Class T fight saw Vos Prinsloo take over the lead from Malcolm Koch, who slipped to second place, both NWM Fords remaining ahead of defending champion Johan Horn in the Malalan Toda Hilux. In the specials category, Lance Trethuri led the Class A fight comfortably, with Timmy Howes and Clint Gibson in a distant second and third place. The Class P Championship hasn't really featured any battles, as each of the point scorers raced in a different event. Still, Daniel Retief topped the charts, with Willem de Tooy and Gary Campbell completing the top 3. And finally, the super competitive Class G field saw Cecil Lani still at the top of the pile. With Dean Bradbury in second, he had Ken Rutherford sniffing at his tailpipes, just 3 points further back. Next order of business, getting ready for the 4x4 Mega World 400, round 5 of the championship. We caught up with some of the key players just before the start of the Saturday's race. Defending champion Henk Ladergan made the most of round number 4, taking overall honours on the Friday, but he knew that a second full race on the same weekend would bring a massive challenge.
It's quite interesting having 2 races in one weekend. It feels like the desert race, really tough. I feel a bit tender from yesterday. It got really rough.
He'd have his work cut out for him, with the 2 Woolridge brothers very much in the hunt for victory. Lance had a disappointing result on round number 4, but was keen on making up ground on the Saturday.
Today is a day of redemption for me, otherwise I think the championship's out of our hands a bit. So yeah, we've got to throw everything at it today.
Brother Gareth reached the 3rd step of the podium last time out and was ready to challenge the field once again. But both the Ford and Toyota crews would have to keep a close eye on Brian Baragwanath, who finished second on round 2. The Century 6 driver is seriously quick, and he had victory on his mind at round number 5.
We literally can't afford any mistakes. So yesterday we made 1 mistake, 1 gate, 2 minutes, and that's your race over. So
the battle for Class T honours saw some changes at the top of the leaderboard, as Vos Prinsloo took over the log leader from Malcolm Koch.
Well, the plan is to go as hard in the prologue as we can.
As for Koch, the big Freiburger lost out in round number 4, but was all fired up to come back with a vengeance at round 5.
Yes, we're going to try our best, keep it steady. There's a few left for the year, so yeah.
Defending champions Johan and Werner Horn faced an uphill struggle in round number 4, but managed to bag some points despite their setbacks. They were primed and ready for a fresh start in round 5.
But yeah, it makes it interesting. We've got 3 races to go still, so yeah, let's see.
In the category for special vehicles, the man at the very top of the pile is Lance Trethuri, who has made mincemeat of his competition in 2021. The big man didn't even realise it, but one more win could seal his title.
Well, to be quite honest, I know we're leading it, but I don't know how far we are ahead. But, let's worry about the championship at the end of the year.
And finally, it was the Lanis at the top of the standings in Class G, and the side-by-side crew seemed to have it all figured out ahead of round 5.
Today we're going to just take a chill and try and finish, just try and extend that lead, and hopefully by the end of the year we have a chilled last event.
Those are some of our players getting ready to tackle the terrain around Berteville. But beyond those in the limelight came a whole field of quality entries across 2 categories and 5 classes, including production cars, special vehicles and side-by-side racing machines. While spectators were still not allowed in the DSP, there was an air of expectation in the Free State, especially with fairer weather and blue skies marking round number 5. First order of business was to determine the starting order for the main event. With another full race in a day, the Pirelli qualifying race was set for another short sprint. For round 5, the organisers had set out a 15-kilometre track for the qualifier, which would be followed by 2 racing loops of 180 kilometres each. The Class FIA fight has been a tumultuous affair all year, and even more so after round number 4 of the championship. In round 5, it was abundantly clear that this was still a 5-horse fight, with Brian Baragwanath and Leonard Kramer the 5th of these horses when it came to qualifying. Ahead of the Century crew came Chris Visser and Albertus Venter in 4th. The pair took 6 seconds out of Baragwanath's time and got mighty close to taking 3rd on the Pirelli qualifier. But the 3rd step belonged to Lance Woolridge and Alvin Vonk in their Ford Ranger. They were just 9 seconds off the winning pace and clearly had every intention of making up for the ground they lost on round 4. Just 3 seconds ahead of Lance was his brother, partnered with Boyd Dreyer. The younger Woolridge has shown exceptional pace over the last few rounds, and his 2nd place in the qualifier cemented his position as one of the front runners. He trailed by a mere 6 seconds. And finally, the man of the Pirelli qualifying moment was none other than defending champion Henk Ladegan, with Brett Cummings beside him. Having shown he was back with a vengeance at round number 4, Ladegan picked up where he left off the day before, right at the front. In Class D, Dylan Venter and Vince van Alleman flew the flag for the 4x4 Mega Worlds by going 4th fastest, just 19 seconds off the winning pace. They had Vos Prinsloo and Andre Vermeulen ahead of them in the Ford Ranger. The winners from the previous round were clearly spoiling for a fight again in round 5. But they had to contend with teammates Malcolm and Frans Koch, who pipped the round 4 winners by a single second to go 2nd fastest on the qualifier, just 6 seconds off the winning pace. This meant that it was the Horn brothers in the Malalan Toyota Hilux who came back swinging after losing out on maximum points at round number 4. They had some ground to make up, and winning the Pirelli qualifier was a real good start. As for the special vehicles, Lance Trethewey and Adrian Roots again proved unbeatable in their Bat Venom. The pair posted a time of just 7 minutes and 52 seconds, taking pole in the process. The crew in 2nd place, however, lagged only by a single second. Louis Dupria and Tian Swart were right on Trethewey's tail, setting up for a good battle in the main event. And finally, Bula Buertas and Jay Pretorius completed the qualifying podium for Class A. In Class P, there was just a single runner, in the form of Keith and Andrew McInerney. Class G saw the Lanis bring their Can-Am home in the 3rd fastest time of the morning, making good on their promise to take things a little bit easier at round 5. They had Basil Besadenhout and Rickers Hutting 9 seconds ahead of them in 2nd place, with Besadenhout clearly showing his intent to vie for victory in the main race. But the man of the moment was none other than navigator turned racer Jeff, in it to win it minute, with Gerrit Snyman beside him in the sidie. Let's take a look at the details from qualifying. In Class FIA, Ladegan and Cummings resumed their regular service, whilst the 2 Ford brothers were separated by just 3 seconds for 2nd and 3rd. In 4th, Visser was clearly still in with a shout. Class T saw the Horn brothers fight back, setting the fastest time over the qualifying distance. They had the Cox 6 seconds back, whilst Prinsloo and Vermeulen were just a single second adrift off 2nd place. The specials were a perfect copy of the day before, with Lance Trethewey and Adrian Roots taking the qualifying win in Class A, Louis Dupria and Tian Swart in 2nd, and Bula Buertas and Jay Pretorius in 3rd. Keith and Andrew McInerney were again the only runners in Class P. With the Mostards removed from the equation after their mishap in round 4, it was Jeff Minott and Gerrit Snyman who made the most of their qualifying. They had Besadenhout and Hutting 12 seconds behind them, and the Lanis a further 9 seconds back in 3rd. But the Pirelli qualifying race was just the start. Next up, 2 tough racing loops over varied terrain in the area near Bothaville. So join us after the break for more race action from the 4x4 Mega World 400, round 5 of the 2021 SACCS.
He's done it again. He's on fire on the circuit right now. We see it time and time again, but it never gets boring.
It's Sevens Rugby on your World of Champions. Proudly brought to you by Future Life. Smart nutrition for life.
Out the back. Lukanyuan with the chip. So hard to stop. Here comes Mapimpi. Over the top. Incredible from Creel. Slick handling. Dummy runners in the midfield. Here's Billy LaRue. LaRue!
Unbelievable scenes in dramatic fashion.
Have you heard? The Springboks are headed north.
LaRue for Creel. Secures victory.
And they're bringing the noise.
Utterly heroic.
The Castle Lager Outgoing Tour. Live and exclusive to Supersport. Stay connected to DSTV for all the nail-biting action.
That is incredible. That's a box office parcel, right?
Wow. Pollard is over.
Stay connected to DSTV and get in on all of the epic sporting action with Supersport.
On Saturday.
I hope this time we change the page.
The Manchester derby takes on a new dimension after the champions' uncharacteristic slip at home. While on the other side of town, a change in formation sees the Red Devils back to their best.
Bruno Fernandes looking for Ronaldo! Well, on a day when United need a big result, one of the big hitters delivers.
Then, can the Clarets stop Thomas Tuchel's men who are pulling clear at the top? Man United battle Man City. Chelsea play Burnley. Crystal Palace host Wolves. Brentford take on Norwich. And Brighton face Newcastle. The Premier League on the one broadcaster that brings you unbeatable football. Stay connected to DSTV. This broadcast is proudly brought to you by Discovery.
This Saturday on Supersport, a select Currie Cup ensemble battle the Simbas in a fan-driven clash. Soweto grinds to a halt when arch-enemies collide at the F&B Stadium. And the pinnacle of women's team tennis hits new heights in Prague. Up your game on Supersport. Get all the sporting action. Upgrade to DSTV Premium.
This is it, the 4x4 Mega World 400, Take 2. Round 5 of the South African Cross Country Series and the second race in succession to make use of the famous Nampo Park in Bothaville in the Free States as its home base. The way the event was structured is quite unique in the fact that it was still Saturday morning and already we had seen a qualifying race to decide the starting positions for the main race that was scheduled to cover nearly 400 kilometers to the north and east of the Free State towns of Bothaville and Orkney. You've just witnessed the qualifying race, so you know that defending champion Henk Ladekan would be the first driver to get the race underway. And at 9:30 on the Saturday morning, that's exactly what he did when he dropped the hammer in the Toyota Gazoo Racing SA Hilux. Starting first will always be a challenge as you have to find the road and leave tracks for the others to follow. But Ladekan and Cummings didn't care. The two Ford Castrol cross-country rangers of brothers Gareth and Lance Woolridge, with Boyd Dreyer and Alvin Vont reading the notes from the navigator seat in each of the two rangers, were on form so far this weekend, and the Maritzburg-based team had every intention to take that form into round 5 of the 2021 title fight. And no fight will be complete without mentioning the names of Chris Visser and Albertus Venter. The Freiburg farmer qualified in 4th and set off in his quest to try and close the gap to the two Fords ahead in his Hilux. De Villiers, who unofficially won round 4 the day before, was once again in the mix as the Toyota Gazoo Racing SA team develops the new Hilux Dakar T1 Plus for the upcoming race in Saudi Arabia in January. But as with the race before, De Villiers and Dennis Murphy would not be eligible to score points here at the 4x4 Mega World 400. Someone who was no doubt after maximum points was Brian Baragwanath with co-driver Leonard Kramer in the monstrous Century CR6 buggy. BB, as he is known, learned his lesson the day before when he qualified in pole, so 6 on the road was the perfect starting position for the championship hopeful. 2 minutes after Baragwanath, it was the turn of the third Toyota Gazoo Racing SA Hilux in the hands of Shamir Variawa and Donnie Stassen to drop the hammer just ahead of the beautiful looking and brand new Century CR6 of Ernst Roberts and Henry Kerner. Century team owner Mark Corbett and Rodney Burke were up next in yet another CR6, followed by the first of the Class A special vehicles in the hands of champions Lance Traturi and Adrian Rutz. So that's how the top 10 or so cars started round 5 of the SACCS in Bothaville. Over the next hour or so, another 30 cars spread out across various classes in 2 categories all started their quest for individual glory. Let's jump ahead to near the end of the 200-kilometer long loop number 1 to see how the race was unfolding for the guys and girls in the Premier FIA class. It was pretty much a home race for 4x4 Megaworld's Jason Fenter and Jaco van Aert, who were doing well and were on course for a top 10 finish. The Megaworld Hilux reached the halfway mark of the race just 10 seconds behind the Century CR6 of Mark Corbett and Rodney Burke, so it was race on for Loop 2 between these 2 cars. Father and son Johan and Sean van Staden had a bit of breathing room with a lead of around 2.5 minutes over Corbett in their Motonetics KEC Racing Renault Duster, but they had about the same amount of time to make up on the car ahead of them. This was the new Century Racing CR6 in the hands of none other than Ernst Roberts and Henry Kerner, who found themselves in 7th spot at this stage of the race. Provisional 6th position belonged to the hard-charging Gary Berthold and Siegfried Rousseau in their Toyota Hilux. But the gap couldn't be any closer. Just 2 seconds separated the Hilux from the CR6 after 200 kilometers of racing. We're nearing the sharp end of the field, where Gareth Woolridge and Boyd Dreyer were initially fighting for a top 3 spot, but the pair experienced a few niggles, which slowed their Ford Castrol cross-country Ranger down and into a provisional 5th spot. And speaking of a few niggles, early race leader Henk Ladergan and Brett Cummings had a number of issues to contend with inside their Toyota Gazoo Racing SA Hilux. They had to open the road, got a puncture and had another problem. Here's navigator Brett Cummings with the details at the halfway marker.
It's been really difficult opening the road. Also communication, we're struggling, my voice is gone.
No such problems for Chris Visser and Albertus Venter, who were as consistent as ever. The pair's Hilux reached the halfway point in 3rd place overall, a mere 11 seconds behind the car in front of them.
Today is going very well, thanks. The car is quite good and I enjoy the route, it's very nice.
This is the man that Visser had in his sights, the current 2nd place Lance Woolridge, with Alvin Vont reading the notes from the passenger seat of the rapid Ford Castrol Cross Country Team Ranger. Woolridge won round 1 back in March and had every intention to fight for yet another victory. He would have had to push hard in an effort to try and catch this man though, Brian Baragwanath in his Century Racing CR6. BB and Navi Leonard Kremer were creaming it at the top of the standings, with Ladergan losing time. The pairing went into the second half of the race with a lead of just over 2 minutes. Let's move our attention to the rest of the classes and categories and wrap up the very exciting and competitive 4x4 Megaworld 400, round 5 of 7 in the South African Cross Country Series. Class G for side-by-side vehicles has become a very competitive place, with close battles between loads of cars. But the route here in Bothaville took its toll on most of those cars. The Lani brothers, Cecil and Eladis, had a repeat of the day before when they were forced to return to the DSP halfway through loop number 1 for mechanical repairs. They took another 10-hour penalty that came with it, but then continued to reach the finish and claim the valuable points that came with the 3rd place. Round 4 winners, Basil Besadenhout and Rickers Hutting, added more silverware when they reached the end of the tough race in yet another podium position, this time 2nd. And how is this for a story? Jeff Minott has been a stalwart of the sport and spent many seasons reading the notes for a number of top competitors. But for 2021, the Navigator decided to swap the notebook for a steering wheel. It's been a lifelong dream to compete for the driver's side, but the dream has not been going well so far, mostly due to mechanical issues. But on round 5 of the championship, it all came together for the humble man and his co-driver Gerrit Snyman when they dominated from start to finish to claim an emphatic victory. Minott was elated, to say the least. On to the rest of the cars in the special vehicle category. For this race, we saw a lone Class P entry in the hands of the McInerney brothers, Keith and Andrew, who did well to survive the tough race and reach the end for a well-deserved finish. They finished the race just ahead of the Farmers Meat striker of Lourdes de Pria, and Tian Swat, who are in their debut season and were happy to record a podium finish in Class A after not reaching the end of the race the day before. Podium place finishes are hard to come by, so the two occupants inside the King Price Extreme Porter would have been more than pleased to claim a very well-earned second place finish. A great result for Bullet Huertas and Jay Pretorius, who are still enjoying their rookie season in the exciting sport of cross-country racing. So now that we've counted them down, it certainly shouldn't take much to work out who the victors of this race were going to be. These two have simply been in a class of their own all season long. Just the day before, they made it 4 wins from 4 starts, and there was nothing going to stop the big dog, Lance Trethewey and Adrian Roots, from making it a full house of 5 out of 5 wins in 2021 from behind the wheel of their King Price Extreme bat. Oh, and by the way, it also meant claiming the title with 2 rounds to spare, but that almost goes without saying. After all the times were added up, here's a confirmation of the standings at the end of the 4x4 Mega World 400, and it shows the name of Jeff Minnett at the top of the standings in Class Gs, ahead of Besadenhout and the Lonnies. McInerney took Class P, and for the 5th time in as many events, it's the name of Trethewey who topped the standings in Class A. The sweet moment every racing driver fights for, the taste of victory bubbly on the podium. It was bittersweet for Minnett, who recorded his maiden victory, whilst the Lonnies maintain a grip on the points table courtesy of their 3rd place finish. But what a moment for the big dog, Lance Trethewey and Adrian Roots, who claimed their 5th victory on the trot. As always, the big man was gracious in victory.
Yeah, it's a great result. We're very happy and glad to have Adrian sitting next to me. And just to the landowners, without them it wouldn't be possible. And to Skulk Burger for getting us on the team, and obviously to King Price for backing us, and for that we're grateful.
Let's move on to Class T, where a few Toyotas face an uphill battle against a whole gaggle of Neil Woolridge Motorsport Ford Rangers. Bernard Johnston was forced to retire his Ranger, and so was round number 4 winner, Vos Prinsloo, alongside Andre Vermeulen. Luck seems to be a very scarce commodity for former multiple champions Johan and Werner Horn. The Malalanto to Hilux qualified first, but the brothers were forced to retire with mechanical issues late in loop number 1. So a podium finish was clearly hard to come by, but a podium is exactly what Christo Rose and Arno Olivier got when they reached the end of the 4x4 Mega World 400 here in Bothaville. They missed out on second place by a mere 22 seconds, but on this occasion, the second step on the podium belonged to the ecstatic NWM Ford team of Bapi Rabaluza and Fane Maiwa, who claimed a career best finish since they joined the class in the beginning of the season. But as with the desert race a few months ago, the father and son pairing of Malcolm and Frans Koch were unstoppable. The NWM Ford crew raced to a 17-minute victory, and with biggest title rival Vos Prinsloo failing to finish, this win catapulted them back to the top of the championship standings. 20 Class FIA cars started the race, but as the name suggests, there are only 10 spots available inside the top 10 and only 3 steps on the podium. These are the guys and girls who claimed these prestigious positions. Dierwold van Breda and Johan de Toy made it to 10th place for the 2nd race in succession. They finished the race around 3 minutes behind the 9th place Motonetics KEC Racing Renault Duster of father and son, Johan and Sean van Staden, who had a steady race run after not enjoying a trouble-free run the race before. Jason Fenter and Jacco van Aert would have hoped to place a little higher on their home race, but the 4x4 Mega World crew survived a few niggles and punches to claim a well-deserved 8th place finish. Gary Berthold and Siegfried Rousseau had a fairly comfortable margin between themselves and the Fenter Hilux behind them. The former race winners showed some great pace in their still new Class FIA spec Hilux, and except for a puncher or two, they had a fairly clean run to place themselves 6th at the finish. Ernst Roberts may be called a gentleman racer by some, but he sure is fast. Together with Henry Kerner, the pairing got to grips with their new Century Racing CR6, and it's only a matter of time before they will start to knock on the door of a few podium finishes. Gareth Woolridge and Boyd Dreyer certainly had a podium finish in their sights at the start of the day, but the Ford Castrol Cross Country Team Ranger lost a few vital minutes on the first loop. Woolridge was back up to speed on loop 2 and clawed his way back up the leaderboard, up to an eventual 4th place, less than a minute from the podium finish. And speaking of podium finishes, these were the contenders not only for a podium, but also for overall race victory. The contenders, Chris Visser and Albertus Venter in a Hilux, Lance Woolridge and Alvin Vonk in a Ranger, Brian Baragwanath and Leonard Kramer in a Century CR6, and Henk Ladegan and Brett Cummings in a Hilux. As expected, this turned into an epic battle between the country's top cross-country drivers and machines. Going into the final loop, it was advantage Baragwanath as he had a slight lead over Woolridge and Visser, with Ladegan losing quite a bit of time and slipping down into fourth. But Ladegan is lightning quick and really put the hammer down to drive himself back into contention during loop number 2. In fact, the Toyota passed everyone to climb back up the leaderboard and into first place. The fight with Brian Baragwanath then didn't materialize, as the big Century Racing CR6 was on course for a good result and possibly victory when a suspension component on the rear of the car cried, "No more." BB limped home to cross the line in 7th place. And as everyone thought that Ladegan had claimed victory, he was handed a 2-minute time penalty for leaving the DSP late after loop number 1. This dropped him down the order into 3rd place. This was all the former multiple cross-country champion Chris Visser needed to rocket himself up the leaderboard and into an eventual 2nd place. Yet another podium for this legendary driver in his illustrious career. In the end, there were only 55 seconds separating Visser in 2nd from a race victory. But on this day, the victory was well earned by Lance Woolridge and Alvin Vonk in the Ford Castrol cross-country racing Ranger. With that, Woolridge took his 2nd victory of the year and now is right back into the championship fight. There it is, proof of a fantastic win for Woolridge, just 55 seconds ahead of Visser, with Ladegan relegated to 3rd following that time penalty. And here is Markham Cox's name at the top of the Class T standings, ahead of Rabaluza and Rose. And for the record, the Hilux T1 Plus driven by De Villiers set the fastest time. This bodes well for 2022. Time for the production car winners to celebrate their success at the 4x4 MegaWorld 400 here at Nampo Park, and time for some of the lucky ones to also receive a few special prizes from 4x4 MegaWorld's Dion Fenter. But it was a bittersweet victory for Lance Woolridge, who also did his championship aspirations no harm at all.
So yeah, fantastic day today. Alvin was perfect, and I really enjoyed the route. It was a lot more tighter and technical today, so you know, that suits me and suits our car, and yeah, just pushed hard all day long.
And that brings us to the end of round 5 of the 2021 SACCS. Join us in Freiburg on the 29th and 30th of October for the penultimate round of the 2021 championship. All this action was officially brought to you by Toyota, Ural, Ford and Pirelli.